Desiree. That's your new nickname, Desiree.
You know that's actually Lucille Ball's middle name.
Desiree?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. And, I could have lied right there and been cool. I could
Mm-hmm.
have lied and been cool. But now,
Desiree.
you guys hear us. We are back again. What's interesting is that this is our second time doing this because for some reason, what I was saying the last time we tried to record this intro for part two of Susan Powell, it was so mesmerizing that it did not record my voice. It only recorded Desi's.
Absolutely. As it should be.
As it should be. Okay, that's okay. You got me. You got me. You got me. Because you got me. I'm just gonna let you have that one.
Okay. So this one we're doing is a second part. I'm sorry. Can you do me a favor?
What?
Can you just start over? I had no idea we were getting into it. And it
Okay,
just
sure. I'll start
okay.
over. I promise you.
Okay, so now delete that. Start
Okay.
over.
All right.
No, you're not doing anything. Delete it.
No, look. I cut it in post, and then we start over. All right. That's how you cut it in post, and
You
then
need
boom.
to, you need to give me a warning because I had no idea we were just starting. I thought you were still
Okay.
talking about whatever.
All right.
Okay.
Got you. Got you. All right. So this is John Crimes here with Desi again. And this is our second time trying to record this. We recorded this what last week?
Yeah. No, a couple days ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we got everything fixed out now and good
We
to
were having
go.
technical difficulties.
I like it because look, I'm still a little under the weather a little bit.
Hmm.
I was so sick last time, and I don't know. I think I sound normal to everybody else, but when it's your voice, especially when we did the part where Josh's teacher failed him for a painting. I mean, I,
Right.
I
When
was
he's,
all stopped up. You didn't hear
yeah,
it?
it kind of gave you, I think I told you a bit of a British twang. It's funny.
Twang.
Twang. I
Oh,
don't know if
really?
British people have twangs, but yeah.
Oh man, I was struggling, but it came through. Got it out there. Everybody really really liked part one. Waiting for part two. I think we kind of.
I appreciate the feedback that I've seen so far for part one. Um, I think people are really feeling for Susan. It's so
Yeah,
easy to, but people are really feeling for Susan, and it makes you want to hear more of her story, even though we all know it's a sad one.
yeah, yeah. You're right. And then it kind of ends like on a high note, and I just want to warn people that was it. It doesn't get any higher than when that at. It's about to be really really.
Yeah.
It's about to be bad on this one. This is like Desi is not going to understand this, but this is for nerds. This is going to be like the Empire Strikes Back, part two of Star Wars, where the bad guys and everything just went all crazy. She don't know what I'm talking about, but it's cool.
I don't want to lose any of the listeners, but I've never you can cut this out, but I've never seen one Star Wars movie. You can cut this out. I
No,
know
I'm
they're
not cutting it out because look, you're gonna be surprised. There's so many. There's a lot of people who haven't watched Star Wars and they just know about
yeah,
the lightsabers and stuff.
right. Yeah. Well, with this story, what impacted you the most
I don't know
so
if
far from what you've heard?
I don't know if impact's the right word. What stood out to me about this case, where I'm like, okay, when you said should we do it, and I looked into it, I'm like, yeah, it's just
Hmm.
the weird dad, man.
The dad.
Yeah,
The
weird,
dad's a
weird
trip.
dad, all the way. I mean, and then I was thinking weird because you first start researching, you look at his relationship with Susan, which we're about to go into on this one,
Hmm.
but then when you do real like deep research, you're like, oh man, he been like this for a minute. So I don't know
Yeah.
if that intrigues the right word, but I don't know. That's the one that stood out to me was his father, and just the fact that you, what's the right word? Like you just like if I meet somebody, I want to date them. I'm just thinking about this one person, but that one person comes with a whole family. They come up with a lot of things and thoughts and ideas that come from the kind of family that they had, the kind of environment, and just how looking at it from an outsider point of view and putting yourself in the shoes of Susan, it just makes you
Right.
feel like, man, she really don't have no idea, bro.
And You're right. And when you start peeling back more of the story and you put yourself, because what we do as human beings, just naturally,
Mm-hmm.
we put ourselves in these stories. And the little red flag, as a woman, and you're thinking, do you continue? Would you, as yourself, continue this relationship? Would you
Mm-hmm.
run from the first red flag when you first meet the dad? And she just kept going. And, her faith was very strong and she expresses it a lot. And I think that's what kept her going in this marriage, where someone who's not as strong in that faith would have ran immediately because
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot. I mean, you're going to put up with if someone told you you're going to marry this guy, but what comes with it, the warning before you even know is his father, oh, he's going to record you. He's going to follow you around the house and videotape you and save it.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that would be okay with that.
Yeah.
It's just weird. It's creepy.
Yeah. I'm looking like this. I'm getting confused. I'm like, yo, did we put that in part one already? Or are we about to do this in part two?
No, we did.
Oh
We
yeah.
did.
I was like, I didn't know
We
like
did.
which volume is it on? One or volume two? Okay. All right. Well, if you we're gonna answer all the questions you guys had about Stephen Powell right now as we dive deep into part two of the Susan Powell case. Don't forget to check us out on Alibi-ish on Twitter and on Instagram, ALIBI-ISH. Don't forget to follow Desi Madigan. Just the same name you guys see on the screen here. First and last name, no dots, no anything. And the same thing with me, John Crimes. That's on all social media.
Yep. And this is part two of the Susan Powell story. Imagine you get a knock at the door from a law enforcement officer. You're a mother with two young daughters, so you have no idea what information this police officer is about to give you on the other side of that door as you open it. You assume that your girls are safe in your home, doing the most mundane and most private of things in the comfort of your own home. Things like being in the bathroom, bathing, putting on your pajamas to go to bed. This police officer knocks the wind out of you with the information that your own next-door neighbor, the creepy one, the one whose daughter-in-law disappeared under mysterious circumstances, not only recorded this daughter-in-law, but he propped up a camera perfectly pointed at your house with the sole purpose and intention to record your little girls for his own personal, let's keep it clean, self-enjoyment? How would you feel? Now, I know that's a silly question, but as a mother myself and researching for part of this story, my body burned from the inside thinking of what that would do to me. Hearing this information, just shocking you to your core. That neighbor was Stephen Powell, father of Joshua Powell, like I said, father-in-law of Susan Powell, the missing mother from Utah, and another one of his unwilling victims of these types of recordings for, again, his gratification. That's the type of content that law enforcement officers and detectives discovered in Stephen Powell's home, among a mountain of other disturbing images resulting from a search warrant that was issued on Steve's home August 24, 2011, and was executed the next day. See, Steve literally brought this search upon himself, as he was insistent on exposing Susan's private journals and diaries from her childhood that were in his possession after Josh moved himself and his kids out of the home he shared with Susan and into Stephen's house almost immediately after Susan went missing. Totally normal, right? Both he and Josh were creating websites to expose these journals, and in his own demented mind, Steve thought these would show how unhinged Susan was, and the idea of her running away was quite plausible. He even suggested that perhaps she met a lover and ran off, left her family, left her kids, her husband, to start a new life. He even went as far as making an appearance on the Today Show, Steve did. He called these diaries evidence and read excerpts from these journals. Now, that word, evidence, gave the police a full open door to now have a reason to search Steve's house for any evidence that may lead them to Susan's whereabouts. The day of the search warrant execution, the police surrounded the house and surrounded the front door. Josh opened the door when he heard them shouting, and they made their way in. Josh looked like a deer in headlights. Alina Powell, Josh's sister and Steve's daughter, and one of the family's strongest and loudest supporters, at first refused to allow them to search the house, but when she realized she had no choice, she then gave in. Charlie and Braden, Susan and Josh's little boys, were also there. Who wasn't there was Steve Powell. See, it's not exactly confirmed, but there was a job interview, quote unquote interview or job opportunity that suddenly came up for Stephen. Law enforcement officers won't confirm that they made this up for him, but it was conveniently 2 hours away during the day of the search warrant execution. Josh called Steve, of course, to let him know what was happening, and they both panicked immediately. Now, the primary target was Susan's journals, but the warrant also allowed for computer, media, photos, journals, even Josh's minivan to be searched. And there was a lot. Alina alone had 4 laptops and a wireless router in her bedroom. Josh panicked and did not want them to take his computers or any of the computers in the house. Officers told him that they would hurry and return them to him immediately if he just provided the passwords. He said he forgot them. Now, Josh was not one to forget anything. He would scan even receipts to keep a paper trail of everything. So him forgetting passwords was not true. Alina was very angry and outspoken about her anger during the search. Detectives went room to room. It was quite the task for them. Stephen kept the place in what can only be described as organized hoarding. Bookshelves and libraries, tons of computers, and a lot of hard drives. A lot of paperwork about Susan, and the website information was also everywhere. They finally found Susan's journals. That's what they came for, after all. They found a safe, and once they went into John's room, one of the other sons, boy, the disturbing items that he had detectives describing it as a house of horrors. He had very graphic and scary photos of women and, let's just say, their private areas. Disturbing. Next was Stephen's lair, his master bedroom. This is where they found most of the things. They found his musical recordings in which he would sing inappropriate and creepy songs for Susan. Songs where he would declare his love for her and their private love affair they could engage in.
I said I love you, is that a crime? And what if I said to you one more time, I love you, so put me in jail. I said I love you, I couldn't help it, and you were mistaken if you thought I'd shelf it. I love you, so cough up my mail.
They opened up a file cabinet that they found in the closet, and there were, almost in unison, 20 to 25 detectives said, wow, because what they found was beyond disturbing. Susan's undergarments, bras, underwear, and her temple garments. You know, the ones that were a constant reminder of the covenants they made in the temple. They were stolen from Susan by Steve when she lived there years ago. He had voyeur photos of Susan, and also what's interesting is Many of the photos had Josh in them, but he would cut Josh out because during the time that Susan lived there, and pretty much throughout their entire marriage, Stephen was hoping to cut out Josh of the relationship and keep Susan to himself, his son's wife. Police found bags of Susan's hair, nail trimmings, used cotton balls that were tested and proven they were Susan's, and yes, used feminine products of Susan's. Wow. They found tons of VHS tapes and commercial pornography, high-8 video cassettes, and they were all labeled with Susan's names. He had 10 years worth of journals where he wrote all of his fantasies of Susan. Then the findings became more intense, more and more pornography, cartoons that were depicted in very graphic stages and very graphic images, and also searches on the computer that even shook the detectives to their core. Since they found some photos of underage celebrities, they attempted to have Josh arrested, but the warrant was denied. They had many encrypted drives, and to this day, there are so many drives that were encrypted that they have not been able to be cracked. Then in early September of 2011, they seized Steve's work computer. It was the only one they hadn't retrieved just yet. And there was so much data in that computer alone that it took them from September 2011 to the next summer of 2012 to extract and view all of the data. Months later, after detectives finally went through all the contents, they found everything from boring home movies to voyeur videos of young women and girls being recorded without their knowledge. A lot of Susan in these videos. So much Susan. So much violating of Susan. He loved watching and videotaping unsuspecting women and then videotape himself enjoying his content. Then the neighbor girls. 2 of them. Clearly underage and recorded in various stages of undress. He had these saved onto a CD, and he wasn't even subtle with the labeling of such things. One CD was Taking Bath 1, another was Taking Bath 2, and they were all from that propped up camera on the second floor that I mentioned earlier. The ages of these girls were 8 and 10, and he recorded them for days and days and nights and nights. Now, during all of this discovering that was happening, the courts blocked any further publications of Susan's journals, and the Cox parents filed a lawsuit for invasion of privacy, hoping to block any future attempt at publishing Susan's journals. The judge even pointed out that maligning your wife while she's missing is probably not the best way to prove your innocence. They also found journals and videos of Steve speaking of his own daughter, Jennifer, which may explain why she felt such disdain for him and for Josh. Jennifer wrote of this in her own book and described how inappropriate Steve would be with her as a child, even exposing her to very inappropriate images and videos. Now back to the neighbor and her daughters. They had been Steve's neighbors from 2006 to 2007. The photos were shown to the mother. She began to cry and cry, confirming that the girls in those photos were indeed her daughters, never knowing what her neighbor was up to for that entire year. And it was finally on September 22nd, 2011, that prosecutors filed charges for possession of child pornography and voyeurism against Steve Powell. They arrested Steve, and after that arrest, they went straight to Steve's house to take the children, Charlie and Braden, into protective custody. They needed to know and make sure that Josh was involved or not involved in any of this. That was definitely not the type of place young children should be, as the brother Michael, one of the other sons, had also engaged in questionable activity. The social worker came to the home, took the boys, who were thankfully, at that time, happily unaware of what was going on. For all intents and purposes, they seemed healthy and well taken care of. Josh was surprisingly not shaken or worried about Steve or his kids being taken. No fight was ever put up, and he didn't try to stop them from taking the boys. September 23rd, 2011, a judge denied and blocked any other publication of Susan's journals and demanded they be removed and returned to the Cox parents. It was also Stephen Powell's first court appearance, pleading not guilty to all 15 counts. He was being held at the Pierce County Jail. Now, during all of this discovery and all of this disturbing detail that came out, remember, the Cox family is still suffering, not knowing where Susan is. They begged and begged Steve and Josh for them to just disclose where her location was. To no avail. And what's interesting is during all of this, even discovering many photos and videos that Josh was not aware of, he was still very forgiving of his father, even of all his awful behavior and feelings for his wife, Susan. Stephen Powell was ultimately convicted of voyeurism in 2012 and served a 30-month sentence. The court had dismissed the charge of possession of child pornography in 2012, but the State Court of Appeals reinstated that charge in 2014. He was convicted of the crime in 2015 and then released after serving an additional 2 years. Unfortunately, for the sake of the case and for the sake of ever knowing what happened to Susan, Stephen Powell died of a heart attack in 2018 at the age of 68 in Tacoma. So whatever information, secrets, anything he knew about Susan's whereabouts or participation in her disappearance, he took with him to the grave.
I know. You guys are all thinking, hey, have we missed a section because Susan is missing and this isn't where we left off? Well, we wanted to get all of the secrets out of the way so you'll know exactly who Stephen is, and it's important for this next part. So, where we left off on part 1, it seems that their marriage was coming all the way down to the ending part of 2009, where Susan didn't feel safe and had all of her ducks in a row in a locked safety deposit box. See, it's only fitting that we start this on December the 5th of 2009. That fell on a Saturday evening. It's around 9:30 p.m. when the Powell family is usually getting ready for bed, but this day is different. Mommy didn't make us brush our teeth? Wow. The children, Charlie and Braden, are a little bit confused. His father packing his vehicle full of camping supplies, such as a tent and a couple of shovels. Charlie and Braden cannot hide the sadness on their face, as their father typically goes camping by himself, especially when it's harsh weather as it is today. It feels as if a blizzard is coming. Susan comes downstairs as she kisses both her boys, Charlie and Braden, and Josh kisses his wife as well. Then Josh tells his boys, "Hey guys, guess what? You get to come camping with Dad today." No objection at all from Susan. Josh puts his boys on their boots, heavy pants, jacket, put them in their seatbelt, as he puts his car in reverse and backs out of his driveway as he heads on this awesome, cold camping trip, father and sons. Susan smiles from the front porch as she's going to lay home this Monday. No, I did not mess up on the days. Just keep listening. The boys remain in the car with the heat on as Josh works extensively outside to set up a tent that keeps blowing away in the harsh winds. But Josh is no rookie for this. Again, he typically goes camping in these weathers all the time. Josh finally gets the tent all set. He rushes inside of his car, grabs his boys, and puts them inside of the tent with 2 warm heaters inside. All 3 inside of the warm tent having a great conversation as Josh tells his sons about the lake at his mother's job. They typically visit this lake all the time when taking Susan to work, playing, kicking rocks, and enjoying the nice summer days. They also talk about the airport, where Josh takes his boys all the time to watch the planes fly above. This is something Charlie in particular really loved to do. Weird, the wind sounds exactly like the airplanes as they would fly over Charlie's head at the airport, almost as if this is some inception of a dream sequence. S'mores all eaten, Braden passes out with chocolate on his face, right in the arms of his father, but Charlie stays awake. The brave yet bored Charlie decides, as Daddy and my brother sleep, I would love to go and search these woods here at Pony Express Trail, wondering what treasures he can find outside. So Charlie leaves the tent and he goes searching. Unknown what he's searching for, but he's startled when he sees his mother Susan. Susan is standing there smiling, having on the same clothes she had on the day before, wrapped in the same blanket I'm going to tell you about in just a short moment. As Susan smiles, Charlie tries to run to her. Susan walks away. She turns the corner, and as fast as Charlie turns the corner, she's gone, nowhere to be found. Charlie, crying alone, ventures further into the Pony Express Trail, his little boots digging deeper and deeper in the snow as he searches for his mom, as he's blinded by a beautiful light. Charlie walks closer to these lights, and as he gets closer, he realizes these are crystals. He walks through the flowers that bloom as he takes each step towards the crystals. Flowers blooming in less than a second. Charlie gets close to the crystals, and now they surround him. He looks to his side, and he sees his mother lying in the crystals. He walks over to his mother Susan and kisses her in the face and tells her goodbye, and then slowly walks back to his tent and lays in the arms of his father. Sunday morning. Josh, tired after fully packing all of the material, puts them back inside of his car as his boy sits inside with the heat on. Josh sits in the driver's seat as he looks back at his boys and says, "Hey, time to go back to Mommy." But on the drive back, Josh realizes something. December the 7th isn't Sunday. December the 7th is on a Monday. This means Mommy must have gone to work. So Josh calls his wife when he leaves this voice message.
Somehow my brain missed the day. I thought today was Sunday. Anyway, hopefully you got to work okay. And, of course, give me a call. We're planning on picking you up. But let me know, because if you have plans afterwards or whatever.
Charlie and Braden play together in their car seats as Josh waits outside of Susan's job, and he leaves another message.
I'm out here, so I'm just waiting for you. So anyway, I'm in front. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye.
Everything I just told you cannot be confirmed by anyone alive today. You see, all I did was add colorful commentary to the story that Josh Powell told everyone. That he left camp on Sunday morning, literally forgetting an entire 24 hours is what he wants all of us to believe, and not realizing it's Monday. The sad part is, the story I told you all about Charlie seeing his mommy lying with the crystals wasn't any make-believe that came from me, for he actually said those words. So of course, with Josh saying he thought it was Sunday, the voice recordings are real. But as you decide if you want to believe this fictitious, alleged fictitious story I added colorful commentary to that Josh said was true, let's talk about the real day of Sunday, December the 6th, 2009, the day before all of this happened. It wasn't a regular Sunday in the Powell's household. Yes, the boys are playing with their father as Susan watches television, but on this day, she calls her neighbor, Giovanna Owings, to come over to continue knitting and doing crochet. Giovanna and Susan talk. They talk about a lot of things. Susan confides in Giovanna that she recently had a miscarriage a month ago. Seeing the sadness on Susan's face, Giovanna lended helpful advice, saying this may be the reason that she's so tired lately. But this isn't what's weird about today. What's weird about today is how awesome Josh Powell is. I mean, Josh is so caring. As his wife talks to her neighbor, he comes and gives her a blanket. He doesn't stop there. The Joshua Powell that never cooks is making pancakes. Josh is so awesome. He's not only making pancakes, he's calling the creep, he's calling his father to get a recipe to make pancakes with. Now, I don't cook myself, but even without me cooking, I know if we want to use 4 ingredients, we can take a little bit of oil, a little bit of eggs, a little bit of flour, and a little bit of water, and we can make pancakes. Or we can even do it better. We can buy a mix that only allows us to add milk and maybe eggs, and we can still make pancakes. Or we can do it with just 2 ingredients. We can get a box of Bisquick and just add water, and we have pancakes. I, with no cooking knowledge in my head, can list off multiple ways to make pancakes, but Josh, in the most peculiar way, wants to call his father Stephen to learn how to make pancakes. Josh makes these pancakes individually. First, he gives a pancake to Giovanna. Then he gives pancakes to Susan as he and the boys lay and play in the kitchen. I think the nice guy pills are wearing off. Abruptly, as Susan lays down on the couch, still in a little bit of pain after eating her pancakes, Josh politely asks Giovanna to leave. I don't think she truly got the hint in the way that he asked her to leave, so he tells her that he has to lock the front door. Giovanna knew this is her cue. Hey, I guess I have to go. But as Giovanna gets in her car to turn on the engine, she sees Josh put the boys in his car and pulls off before she could even get out of the driveway. Josh pulls off with the boys, Susan inside of the house. This is 5:30 p.m. on the real Sunday. And this is also the last time anyone would see Susan alive. But what happens next? The lies? Josh's alleged location? Well, the only word I could sum it up is things are about to get a little alibi-ish.
Charlie and Braden were supposed to be dropped off at Debbie Caldwell's house, as they usually were, for daycare. And they were not. Susan and Josh, neither one of them showed up for work that day either. Their phones, straight to voicemail. Very unusual for either of them. And when police were finally called by Josh's mom to conduct a welfare check, she mentioned that she feared that the whole family might be dead inside from carbon monoxide poisoning. When they finally showed up to the house, they broke a window to gain access, only to find, well, nothing inside the house on Sarah Circle. What they did find was Susan's purse, her credit cards and cash still inside. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary nor missing. Jewelry was still there. Everything seemed to be in place and in order. What was found was near the Christmas tree that was already up. It had presents under it, waiting for the 2 little boys to open, since it was early December. What they did find was 2 white box fans that were pointed at a couch that had clearly been cleaned. It had a damp stain on it. It's eerie to see, as this exact scenario we've seen countless times. If you listen to enough true crime stories, for example, Chris Watts, when his wife was missing and the police gained access to his home, he also had fans going throughout the entire house. And we know what happened with Shanann. When Josh and the kids finally arrived home from their quote-unquote camping trip, it was almost a relief to everyone until they realized that Susan wasn't with them. Hey, Josh, where's your wife? Perhaps didn't plan this part of the story out in his mind. How would I explain taking two little boys on a supposed camping trip in the middle of the night on a work night during a winter storm and come home with no Susan? He must have thought, like all the other husbands that came before him and the ones that came after him, I'll just give a performance for the neighborhood, the camera, the media, and they'll all just believe me that my wife, poof, just vanished, and I'll go on with my life. Well, the police, friends, and neighbors were suspicious immediately. They began doubting the moment he could not say how far down the Pony Express he went that day. And that whole, whoops, I thought it was Sunday, not Monday, supposed realization that he mentioned wasn't being bought as he was trying to sell it to anybody. His alibi was poor at best. Susan would never have allowed such a trip in sub-freezing temperatures with those two little boys. Detectives finally questioned Josh for hours and then searched his minivan, something that he agreed to on that day of December 7, 2009. And in that minivan, they found a packed house, almost like a scene out of a scary movie. A shovel, rake, broom, electrical circular saw, folding hand saw, a box cutter, gas-powered generator, plastic gas can, space heaters, humidifier, tarps, sled, fire extinguisher, among other things in that minivan. Then, what was more surprising, as Josh said he tried to call Susan during his trip many times, they found her pink Motorola cell phone deep in the center console of the minivan, almost like it was purposely buried. The detective asked Josh why he had Susan's phone. He stumbled to properly answer, only to finally say he didn't know why it was there. West Valley City Police spoke with Josh for almost 4 hours on December 8th, trying to understand this story about the overnight trip to Utah's West Desert. Throughout the interview, Josh repeatedly mentioned perhaps wanting a lawyer. Cops assumed he was going to retain one and they would not have an opportunity to speak to him. And they also reassured him that he was free to go whenever he wanted to. Josh did have some scratches and small nicks on his hands, which he seemed concerned about when they photographed him. Now, this is the hard and kind of sad part of the initial investigation. The kids. Charlie and Braden were being interviewed by a female detective in what Charlie said took them by surprise. Mommy had indeed gone with them on this camping trip, but she stayed behind to sleep where the flowers and the crystals grow.
So your mom stayed at the park.
Yeah.
Where did she stay at the park? Do you know where?
She stayed at the National Park.
Do you know where at the park? No?
No. My mom stayed where a crystals are.
Where what are?
Where crystals are.
The crystals?
Yeah.
Crystals?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Crystals?
Yeah.
Your mom stayed where the crystals are?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
When confronted with this information, though, Josh suggested his kids were lying, because they did that sometimes. So you think your kids are lying, Josh? Yeah, sometimes they do. That's what he said to the detectives. Susan did not go on his trip. He was insistent on that.
And if there's anyone who can help her, we can help her right now if you help us out.
No, she was not with us. I didn't leave her at the Pony Express. I didn't just take her out and drop her off or even do anything.
As they then executed search warrants on the Sarah Circle house and the minivan, it was evident that something happened in that house. The police seized computers, hard drives, cameras, and they also found DNA and blood belonging to Susan on the couch that Josh was cleaning just a couple days before. They also found these tiny little blood spots on the floor belonging to Susan. It wasn't enough for an arrest just yet, as it could have been a number of things. Maybe she sneezed and had a bloody nose or cut her finger. They searched his minivan again and then placed a GPS on it with the hopes that he would eventually lead them to where he left her. That did not happen. Instead, they turned their attention to Steve Powell, his father, and they wanted to know what he knew about the state of his son and Susan's marriage, especially since they lived with him at some point early on. At this point, during this interview with Steve, it had been over a week since Susan's disappearance, and they were definitely looking at Josh as a suspect of hurting Susan, or worse. Steve, as we've come to know now, would tell detectives how sexual and flirty Susan was with him, even though detectives had prior knowledge that this was not the case, and Susan did not like him at all for this exact reason: how inappropriate he was with his own daughter-in-law. They searched Steve's house and found nothing that would indicate that she was there, buried or kidnapped or being held. Police began to search the hundreds of mines in the Great Basin area and searched in places that would be similar to what Charlie had described to detectives during the initial interview with the boys. An interesting bit of information from one of Susan's co-workers at Wells Fargo was how creepy Josh's choice of words were and how it scared and worried Susan. She would relay this to her friends and co-workers at Wells Fargo. He would describe how stupid some of these criminals were while watching true crime television shows, and how you could hide a body in the West Desert and no one would ever find it. She mentioned that she would fear for her life or what Josh was capable of doing. Throughout the end of 2009 and the beginning of 2010, they continued their search throughout the mountains and mines of the West Desert areas. Using modern equipment and monitors, high-intensity lights, all day and all night. They used waterproof cameras for the really deep mines. Then they moved on. In March of 2010, they searched in Wendover, Utah, and the Simpson Mountains, all during heavy snow months. I mean, if they were going to find any sort of sign that Susan was around, she certainly would not be alive. The search continued from summer into fall of 2010 in the East Tintic Mountains and then Eureka, Utah. Still, no sign of Susan. Josh Powell's estranged sister Jennifer Graves always suspected that her brother had killed Susan. Right from day one, it never sat right with her that her own brother would take these boys in the middle of the night camping, and Susan would just be okay with it. She protected those boys with every fiber in her. So Jennifer was always skeptical of everything Josh said. And when Josh up and moved from the Utah house that he shared with Susan to live with their father, Steve, her suspicion grew even more. She let police know her feelings, and they were a bit skeptical at first, not knowing what side she was actually on. And when the idea of traveling to Washington came up through her husband's work, Jennifer immediately thought of doing something not only drastic, but risky to help police prove that Josh had something to do with this, and she was hoping to get him to confess. She suggested she wear a wire. She wanted to visit her father and her brother and get him to confess, get it on tape, on this wire that she would be wearing. Police were shocked. but happy to do it. They had to jump through hoops, though, as Washington is a two-party state for recording. You have to get consent unless there's special circumstances, like in this case, perhaps a murder. On the afternoon of January 22nd, 2010, Jennifer surprised the Powell men, as their relationship wasn't great during this time, but her showing up was already odd. As she describes it, the silence about Susan was loud. No one mentioned the fact that Susan was missing during dinner. No one even brought it up. Just went about dinner and the night and how their day was. After they had dinner, Jennifer couldn't take it any longer. She started talking about Susan, and Josh threw out maybe we can build a website for tips or something. Very nonchalant about his missing wife. So she finally had enough, and she took Josh aside into the next room, and the questioning began. Where is Susan? Just tell me where her body is. Take a plea deal if you have to. He was shocked, to say the least. Don't be ridiculous, he would say to her. There's no plea deal. I don't know where she is. I've told you this. Plus, my attorney told me I can't talk about it. He always reverted back to saying his attorney said he can't talk about his missing wife. He wouldn't budge. She questioned his whereabouts of that day, of the camping trip. Nothing. He would say nothing. Steve heard the conversation and quickly intervened, and then just had Josh leave to go pick up a birthday cake. She then asked Jennifer and her husband to leave because Steve had had enough of the questioning of Josh, and a fight immediately began, with Steve disowning Jennifer, calling her vile names, his own daughter, and Alina, his other daughter, speaking ill of Susan, perhaps suggesting she had taken off. She had left the family because she was that way. As time went on, all of the leads police would receive, the calls, the tips, would go nowhere. They followed up every lead, with Josh still being at the top of the suspect list. In fact, he was the only name on the suspect list, with perhaps Steve having something to do with it. They would stage honk and waves to kind of annoy Steve or agitate him to finally snap and say something, and maybe get him to talk. Nearby his grocery store and all the different shops that he would go, they would stage these honkin' waves with pictures and posters of Susan saying, "Remember me? Don't forget about me. Call police if you know about Susan and her whereabouts." All that did was cause a public fight between the fathers. Jennifer would also be outside yelling at Steve and Mr. Cox with the intention of trying to divert away from Josh and her family. More leads, more mountain searches, more mine searches. And the years just went on.
Now we've reached the part I have been reluctant to do since deciding to do this story. And it's crazy because as I sit here, I'm thinking about the beginning of the story. Steve Powell, his wife and his children, and how can one man have a loving family and it turn out so horrific in the end? Not understanding exactly what he was doing to Joshua's brain, and for it to come full circle for September of 2011, Steve getting busted and going to prison for child pornography and voyeurism. Josh devoted so much of his life to his father, and it is his father that's going to be his downfall. When Steve goes to prison, Josh will lose custody of his two boys. This is going to devastate Josh more than anything in the world. But not from being a father. The arrogance, the hatred for his two boys living with Susan's parents. And while they were living with Susan's parents, it is the actual state that had custody of the boys, granting Josh only supervised visits. And I think of this, and I think of just how short time is. To go from September to January is to go just from fall to winter. Just one short change of a season. That's all we get. That's all that's left. Josh is going to try to take some form of control because he knows his supervised visits are even at locations he doesn't approve of or he has no control over. So he rents a house and pleads with the state to allow custody to come to him at his rental home in South Hill. However, it still will be supervised. There will always be an authoritative figure there to watch Josh as a child as he's with his children. His children have changed as well, too. The first time, Charlie told us about the crystals. The second time he'll talk to law enforcement, he's going to tell them he can't talk about his mom and he can keep secrets. I wonder who told Charlie this, who taught this child not to speak about his own mother. Doesn't really matter to Josh because Josh put everything into the fight he has on the final week in January of 2011. And in this fight, it's the fight to get his boys back. He's beaming with confidence in this as well. He knows for certain he's going to get his boys. But what he doesn't know is that the police has discovered about 400 images of simulated child pornography, bestiality, and incest on a computer seized from his home. This isn't Steve's computer. This is Josh's computer. And due to the cartoonish nature, it's not illegal, but it's not going to get you your custody of your boys back. A podcast is something we all listen to, but when you get time after this is over with, go watch Josh Powell's face when he doesn't get custody of his boys granted to him. He looks as if he's seen a ghost. He looks like a shell of his former self. He looks like a man on the verge of losing it all. And he has a visit coming up, February the 5th, the following Sunday after losing full custody of his boys, Super Bowl Sunday. Do you remember where you were when the New York Giants played the New England Patriots? Because I do. And while we were out somewhere having fun, Elizabeth Griffin Hall was on her way to Josh's house as she was the CPS worker who was to supervise and watch over Josh with his two sons, Charlie and Braden. There was just one problem when she walked to the front door, and I'm going to let you hear this, but I must warn you, this is going to be difficult to listen to.
Reporting. Hey, I'm on a supervised visitation for a court-ordered visit, and something really weird has happened. The kids went into the house, and the parent, the biological parent, whose name is Josh Powell, will not let me in the door. What should I do?
What's the address?
It's 8119, and I think it's 89th. I don't know what the address is.
Okay, that's pretty important for me to know.
Sorry, I can't. Just a minute. Let me get in my car and see if I can find it. Nothing like this has ever happened before at these visitations, so I'm really shocked. And I could hear one of the kids crying, but he still wouldn't let me in. Okay, it is just a minute. I have it here. You can't find me by GPS?
No.
Okay, it is, I still can't find it. But I think I need help right away. He's on a very short lease with CSHS, and CPS has been involved. And this is the craziest thing. He looked right at me and closed the door. Are you there?
Yes, ma'am. I'm just waiting to know where you are.
Okay. It's 8119 189th Street, Court East, Puyallup, 98375. And I'd like to pull out of the driveway because I smell gasoline and he won't let me in.
You want to pull out of the driveway because you smell gasoline, but he won't let you...
He won't let me in.
He won't let you out of the driveway?
He won't let me in the house.
Whose house
He's
is
got the
it?
kids in the house and he won't let me in. It's a supervised visit.
I understand. Whose house is it?
Josh Powell.
Okay, so you don't live there, right?
No, I don't. No, I'm contracted to the state to provide supervised visitation.
I see. Okay. And who is there to exercise their visitation?
I am. And the visit is with Josh Powell.
And who's
And he
supervising?
is the husband that I supervise.
So you supervise and you're doing the visit?
Yeah,
You're
I
supervising
supervise
yourself?
I supervise myself. I'm the supervisor here.
Wait a minute. If it's a supervised visit, you can't supervise yourself. If you're the
I
visitor...
do supervise myself. I'm the supervisor for the supervised visit.
Okay, well, aren't you the one making the visit? Or is there another
I'm the
parent
one-
that you're supervising?
No, I'm the one that supervises. I pick up the kids at their grandparents.
Yes. And then who visits with the children?
Josh Powell.
Okay, so you're supposed to be there to supervise Josh Powell's visit with the children.
Yes, that's correct.
And how did
And he's the husband of missing Susan Powell. This is a high-profile case.
how did he gain access to the children before you got there?
I was one step in back of them.
Okay, so they
He
went
shut
into the
the
house
door
and
in
then he
my
locked you out.
Yes, he
Okay.
shut the door right in my face.
All right, now it's clear. Your last name?
My name is Elizabeth Griffin Hall.
Griffin Hall is hyphenated?
Yes,
And what's your phone number, Elizabeth? And what agency are you with?
Foster Care Resource Network. And the kids have been in there by now approximately 10 minutes. And he knows
How
this
many
is
children?
a supervised visit. 2. Braden is 5 and Charlie is 7.
And the dad's last name?
Powell, Powell. L.
2 L's? 2 L's at the end of Powell?
Yes.
His first name?
His first name is Josh.
Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, native?
He's white.
Date of birth?
I don't know. He's about 39.
How tall?
5'10", 150 pounds.
Hair color?
Brown.
Did you notice what he was wearing?
No, I didn't notice what he was wearing.
Is he alone then, or is anybody...
I don't know. I couldn't get in the house.
It was reported that Josh called his boys in the room and said he had something for them before he allegedly started to slice with a hatchet across their face and their necks. Although the official cause of death would be carbon monoxide poisoning from breathing in the smoke. Gasoline was poured all over the house. How can you do that to your own sons? How can a man chop his boys with a hatchet that was found laying right next to his body, attacking them right before they were overwhelmed with smoke? Gas poured all over the house from the 2 5-gallon cans of gasoline found on the premise. Joshua left the recording for his loved ones along with the life insurance policy for his brother. Stephen Powell dies of a heart attack. Josh commits suicide. His younger brother Michael will commit suicide as well, jumping from a multi-story parking garage in downtown Minneapolis, right near his home. And Josh will go on to kill both of his sons. And I know you don't want me to say it, but his wife too. How can one family turn out with such horrific tragedies all through 3 different generations? I'll never know. But I can tell you why I think Josh did this. Josh didn't just lose custody of his boys. He was recommended to go through a psychosexual evaluation and a polygraph test. Josh simply didn't think he was going to pass, and he had spent every single waking moment since the disappearance of Susan not to take a polygraph test. This was the end for Josh. No boys, people finding out what happened to Susan. He has nothing to lose, never gained anything in life, never truly finding a woman that really loved him. That's why Josh did it. Until this very day, as I sit here, no one has been able to find Susan Powell's remains. But I do hope she, along with Charlie and Braden, are lying where the crystals are.
A few details from this sad and very perplexing story is 2 weeks after Susan's disappearance, another player emerged that struck interest. Josh's brother, Michael Powell, who had sold rather quickly his 1997 Ford Taurus for only $100 to a salvage yard. Detectives flew out to meet him and speak with him in Minneapolis, where he was studying cognitive science. When he was ambushed and surprised, really, by an interview that was conducted by these detectives, he was asked if he had used this car to transport Susan's body. He refused to talk. In fact, the only talking he did do was defending his brother and his father fiercely. In 2012, they seized all his digital media, all his computers, hard drives, any paperwork that might help them and lead them to Susan's remains or her whereabouts. Josh was already dead at this point. When Josh died, as did his sons, Michael attempted to collect on the life insurance policies that Josh had left behind that totaled over $1.5 million. Susan's parents sued to stop this. They were not aware that Josh had changed the beneficiaries of the life insurance policies months before his death to Michael and Alina. And on February 12, 2013, Michael Powell climbed to the 7th story of the Center Village building in Minneapolis and jumped, killing himself instantly. Whatever he knew, whatever he did, much like Josh before him and Steve after, he took that to the grave with him. In 2020, the wrongful death lawsuit brought by the parents of Susan Powell finally began. Judith and Charles Cox alleged that the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services didn't do enough to keep their 2 grandchildren safe from their father, who took his own life along with theirs in 2012. The trial kept being pushed back due to the COVID restrictions, but finally they were awarded $98.5 million for pain and suffering. It was then slashed to $32.8 million, about 2/3 of the original award. The state felt this was an excessive amount and filed for a retrial. While we'll never know what really happened to Susan, and perhaps never find her body or her remains or have any type of closure, we can only hope that she's holding her boys tight and being what she only ever yearned to be, Charlie and Braden's mommy.